Hi and welcome to the pillar baking tutorial. In this tutorial I will be taking the high poly of our pillar and bake it down to the low poly that we have created in Maya. In order to do this properly, I'm going to split this pillar into a few more pieces, because when I want to bake this, I don't want the normals of the ornaments to be baked onto the top part and the lower part, because in case we want to rotate the middle part of the pillar, we have to place the ornaments on the other side, and therefore we will have broken normals below these pieces. So I'm going to do that now. Going into the split tab and click split to parts, and because we had the polygroups applied, this should just work properly. And as you can see, I have my parts back. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the ornaments, I'm going to reorder this a bit, bring those to the top. I'm going to merge these together. So I'm clicking the top one, and I'm going to merge and merge it down. So the two ornaments are now one object, and I'm going to do the same for the rest. So I'm taking all the other objects and I merge these, so that in the end we have two objects for the pillar. Okay, great. Now we have the pillar, which is consisting out of two parts. I have one subtool for the ornaments, as you can see here, and another subtool just for the other pillar parts. Now what I'm doing is I'm exporting both of these. So just go here, export, give it a good name. I'm calling this one high poly ornaments, pillar ornaments, so I know what I'm working with. And the same I'm going to do for the pillar, high poly pillar base. Just name it something that makes sense to you, so you can find it back later. Okay, once the saving is done, you can also save your model, of course. Now that we have done the high poly, we have to do the same thing on the low poly, of course, and I'm going into Maya. I've opened the scene with just our pillar in it, and very easy, we have to just separate our mesh, take the ornaments, combine them, and do the same with just the base. So that you have two objects. So name this low poly ornaments. I'll just keep the naming consistent. I called the other one pillar ornaments. So I'm doing this the same here. And this is low poly pillar base. Okay, once we have the pillar separated, we still need to do one thing, and that is to smooth the model. And then I'm going into my UVs, and I'm going to select the UV borders. And I'm doing this by hand, but you can also go onto the internet and get a script for this, which will save you time, but I'm only showing this to you once the manual way, so you know what is happening. So I'm going to select all the borders of my UVs, and I'm going to harden them in order for the normal map to bake correctly. See, this looks like I have them all. And that's why it's good to get a script, because this will just do it automatically for you. But just for demonstration, I'm going to harden these, and then your model will look something like this. And this is ready to be baked with the correct softened and hardened normals. I'm going to do this now for the other base mesh. Once we have the right hardened and softened edges, we can then go and export our low poly models. So I'm calling this LP pillar base. And this one is LP pillar ornaments. Now I'm going to take both low poly models, I'm going to duplicate them, and I'm going to make cages. And these cages are used to determine where our normals are going to bake, in what area they're going to bake. And for what we are doing, because it's very low poly and we're only sculpting pieces off, it's quite easy. We're just taking the cages. I'm going to select all the vertices. I'm going into my move tool. I set this to normal. And then I am just scaling this up a tiny bit into the end direction, so that the cage is slightly bigger than the low poly model. I'm going to do the same for the base. Select all the vertices and scale it up a bit. Then once I've done that, I'm going to export the cages. So this is the base. Adding cage here. And the same for the ornaments. And now we have our low polys, high polys, and our cages, and with this we are ready to bake. And now I'm going into XNormal to create the normal and ambient occlusion map. Okay, I've opened XNormal, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to our baking folder, and I'm just putting in the right models into the right places. I'm starting with the high definition meshes, and for this I am going to use the high poly pillar base. I'm going to put this here, and now I'm looking for the low poly pillar base, and I'm placing this here. To add a cage, we right click on our file, browse external cage file, and I'm going to add the base cage, which is this one. And it warns me that it has to have the same topology, which means the same amount of vertices, otherwise this wouldn't work for me, but we just scaled the cage up, so that's no problem for us. And then in baking options, I'm going to use a 2K texture, because I'm going to scale this down later to a 1K texture when I'm painting. And I keep the edge padding to 4 and put the anti-aliasing up to 4 times. And the only thing I'm going to render in 2K is my normal map. The rest I won't tick. And then when I'm ready, I can hit generate maps. And depending on your machine, this can take a while or go pretty fast. So I'm going to pause this video now. And once everything is loaded, you can see that the program is creating the normal map for you. Okay, this is almost done for me. And it's looking pretty good. Okay, once the normal map is done, I'm going to decrease the texture size to 1K. And instead of normal map, I'm going to bake ambient occlusion map. I personally only use the 1K map because I'm scaling down my color map later to 1K, and it saves me some time. But if you have a powerful machine, of course, go ahead and use the 2K texture settings. That's up to you, whatever you prefer and how fast your machine is. Also make sure you know where you're saving your files. So I've already set this up for the normal map, but this button just tells you where you can save it. And now that this is set up, I'm going to generate my ambient occlusion map. Okay, now the ambient occlusion map is done. And one thing I like to check at this point is how my bakes turn out. And what I like to use for this is just taking my low poly object and throw it into Marmoset, and I'm just applying the normal map. And as you can see, this is looking pretty good. And when we approve of this normal map, the only thing that I'm going to do is we still need to bake the ornaments, which I'm going to do now. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the high poly ornaments. Then I'm going to add the low poly ornaments together with their cage. I'm calling this pillar ornament bakes. Going to make the normal map first. Like this, and the ambient occlusion map on a 1K texture second. Just like this. I'm closing this, then I'm just quickly checking if the baking works for my ornaments. So I'm going to change the normal map texture to the ornaments. And this is looking pretty good as well. Alright, then we can take these textures and combine them into Photoshop. If you don't have Marmoset available, you can also create a material in Maya. So what we can do here is I'm going into my Hypershade, going to create a new material, and in the bump normal mapping options, I'm going to click the checker box, hit File, change the file to tangent space normals, because that's the normal map we have created. And then as for the file, I'm going to place the normal maps I've created. So pillar bakes normals, I'm taking this one. And it gives you a preview here. And I'm going to apply this to the pillar base. And when I hit 6, it shows me the normals. But as you can see, Maya doesn't do that well of a job than Marmoset. So if I add a light in the scene, let's do a directional light. Still in normal mode, so there we go. Which works a bit better if you add a light to the scene, so you can check how your normals are doing in Maya. But this takes a lot of tweaking, so I would recommend using Marmoset or Unreal Engine for this kind of stuff. But even here you can check for errors, and this is looking quite okay, even for Maya. So the last thing I'm doing is to combine my normal maps. I've made a new Photoshop file, so it's quite self-explanatory. You get both of your normal maps. I'll just cut out this part. And this part, like this. And I'm going to delete the rest of the layer so that I have both textures onto one normal map. And you can do the same for the ambient occlusion map. Then we're going to save this, and I'm going to call this pillar normal. Save it as a PNG. And I've created my normal map. Creating the ambient occlusion map is even easier. All you have to do is import both of your maps, and I'm just going to set the blend mode to multiply, and there we have our ambient occlusion map. Going to save this also as a PNG. Pillar AO baked. Save it, and this concludes the tutorial on baking our pillar.